Poker Quest is a fun new roguelite that I started playing last week. Since then, I put in quite a few runs and racked up more than 10 hours of playtime so far. So let's talk about what the game is, what's good about it, and where I think the developers should focus on for the rest of this early access cycle. Poker Quest is a unique card game roguelite that feels very similar to Dicey Dungeons in a lot of ways, except with playing cards instead of dice. You equip your hero with different pieces of equipment, and then place cards that you have in your hand each turn into your equipment to activate them and use them. Some equipment requires certain card combos to activate, while others are more flexible, but might have additional effects if certain card combos are used. For example, there's equipment that requires a card pair to use, while another can be activated by any 3 cards that you have, but deals additional damage if all those cards are diamonds. This creates fun strategy choices within each turn, where you try to decide the optimal choice of cards to match each piece of equipment that you have. Of course, sometimes you only really have one good choice, or no choice at all, but as you get later on in runs, as you have more equipment, as you have upgraded your draw power, the strategizing there gets more detailed and more fun. You can also customize your loadout between runs, adding more equipment as you buy it or find it, and upgrading equipment at blacksmiths for a small fee. The opponents also use cards and equipments in the same way, though not all their cards are always visible to you. Since you can't see most of their cards and their equipment, you can sometimes tell what moves they're about to do and be able to respond accordingly. Though it's not as clear intention-wise as some other card game roguelites like Slay the Spire, where you know exactly what they'll do. You're gonna have to guess a little bit in Poker Quest. Overall, the basic concepts of Poker Quest are just really fun. I enjoy Dicey Dungeons, which again feels similar in a lot of ways, but I think Poker Quest takes that style in a different direction and adds a more traditional roguelike structure to it. There's also a simple overworld with branching paths, merchants, and random events. Poker Quest also brings a good amount of gameplay variety with it as well. There are a number of different heroes you can play as with different starting equipment, and different hero-specific active abilities that use a different resource, energy. There's also a good amount of equipment you can find on your runs to flesh out your build, so there's a lot of room for build crafting there. There are also a lot of different conditions and game mechanics that allow for different play styles and builds. And there's a good amount of enemy and event variety as well, including some poker-like events you can play to get rewards. It's definitely a roguelite through and through, and the core roguelite elements that are there are already great. I've really enjoyed exploring different classes, different items, and thinking of how to counter certain enemies as I play through them. The game also has 2 main game modes, a classic game mode with no crossrun progression, and an upgrade mode with crossrun vertical progression or upgrades. I've mostly been playing the classic mode, but because it's pretty difficult, I've also been regularly playing the progression mode as well in order to go further and have longer runs. Along with that, the game also has challenge modes, custom runs, and daily runs that I've been having a lot of fun with. But there are, of course, some areas for improvement. Most notably, I think that Poker Quest is RNG and randomness heavy, but I don't think that it impacts all parts of the game equally. Most notably, certain heroes and certain enemies are super reliant on RNG. For example, I found heroes like the Ninja to be really hard to play in classic mode because you start with so little draw power, only 2 cards. You need specific combos to utilize the starting equipment. The Ninja needs pairs to be effective, but it's hard to get pairs with only 2 cards. So you feel super RNG reliant earlier on until you can build yourself up. Some of these RNG heroes feel better in the progression mode because you can skip over some of these early weaknesses through your unlocks, but I decided that I won't play these heroes anymore in classic because of that RNG reliance. Conversely, there are also some enemies that are super RNG reliant as well, especially enemies with low probability, heavy hitting attacks. If the enemy has a 10% chance of doing heavy damage, chunking half your health bar, getting that 10% chance 3 times in a row feels really bad and frustrating, especially if that ends an otherwise very successful run. Importantly, I do think Poker Quest has some great counter RNG measures. For example, the Thief's class ability lets them steal a card, which can allow you to prevent enemies from using certain abilities if you take away a card they need in order to use their own equipment. You can use the Knight's Stun as another example to stop one enemy turn before they use one of those low probability, heavy hitting attacks. You can also use gems, which are a fairly common item or resource to get more draw power in a specific turn. And importantly, many heroes and enemies aren't as RNG reliant as others, so they don't have the same potential frustration factor in them. That is to say, I don't think RNG randomness in the game are awful. There is clear and enjoyable counterplay to it, and you can plan around avoiding certain enemies while playing as certain heroes. There's always going to be RNG in these type of games, which is great. It allows for freshness, variety, those type of things. But there are some heroes that feel unviable because of their early game reliance on RNG. And there are some enemies that are particularly frustrating because of the RNG factor as well. I hope that the developers keep that balance in mind with future updates, and as they add more classes, I hope they don't get them locked out of viability because of that RNG. Outside of that, my complaints mostly centered on some unfinished features such as some settings, unfinished artwork, those kind of things that will be addressed as the early access cycle continues. So what's my verdict on Poker Quest? I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it, and it's a really fun roguelite. Despite being in early access, it doesn't feel unfinished. It has a lot of gameplay variety already, and doesn't have any large glaring flaws. The one exception is that there are some game areas that suffer because of the RNG involved. That is to say, in certain situations, it feels like randomness plays an oversized role in determining how successful your run will be. But, as a whole, I still recommend PokerQuest for anyone looking for a novel card game roguelite. I'm really excited to follow this game as they add more classes, more features, and whatever else they decide to do with the game. Please like this video to help me on the algorithm, and thanks for watching.